All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Lauren Clark. It's July 31st, 2025, and we're at Bergström Winery in Newburgh. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
First question to get things rolling is why wine?
Oh God. I feel like it's such a convoluted answer that is so tied to just kind of how I came into my career in general. I'll start off when I was in high school. Didn't get into any of the colleges that I wanted. And I just wanted to get away. I come from an agricultural family, so started off as a dairy and then was transitioned into almond trees later on in the Central Valley of California. And my parents didn't want me to go away, but I was like, I gotta get out of here. It's too hot, it's too dry. I don't want anything to do with ag. And so I thought I wanted to, be a psychology major, go be a therapist and do something glamorous like that. And as time went on, I kind of realized, okay, maybe that's not me. At the time, there was one brewery in town that was locally owned. I was at a friend of a friend's high school graduation party, and I just happened to be chatting to this guy. And he's like, oh, where are you applying? And yada. I go, oh, I think I'm going to go to Oregon State. It's really beautiful. And he goes, well, they have a really good fermentation science program. I was like, I've never heard of that before. That sounds cool. And so I looked it up. I kind of just scrolled their homepage. And I said, wow, that sounds amazing. And I changed my major. Before I even moved, I filled out a form and changed my major. And then I was food science. Shout out to the food science department at Oregon State University. You guys are the best. Pointing at the camera for that, it's so important. And then once I started there, they make you take an intro to beer, wines, and foods or something like that. And I thought I wanted to be a brewer. I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I think I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this from the brew guys, but I found brewing to be too formulaic. And a little bit too recipe-based. I know that there's a lot of exploring you could do, but wine was so intriguing to me automatically because I was like, wow, there are so many factors. There are so many ways you can mess it up. And I think that was really intriguing to me. And it was just kind of like go time from there. I just totally fell in love with the organized chaos of it before I even knew what winemaking was. And I'm still figuring out what winemaking is, I think everybody is, but it just was so mysterious that I had to know more.
So tell me about your education process. If you kind of hopped in right from the beginning, tell me about getting to understand fermentation, winemaking, brewing, all of that. What were the classes like? What was intriguing to you about it?
Yeah, God, it was just I loved the hands-on aspect of it. And honestly, all the people in the food science department were some of the coolest people I've ever met, and incredibly intelligent. I always would say, like, if I was describing the major, because people go like, oh, so you're a chef? And it's like, not at all. And they are some of the most intelligent people I've just ever met. They could be rocket scientists if they wanted to, but they just didn't want to be in a lab behind a computer with a lab coat. They wanted to be out in cellars, in fields, doing the work. And I found that really, really beautiful, for lack of a better word. When I was at Oregon State, a lot of gen education, gen classes, getting your chemistry done, getting your biology done. And at the time I was like, God, I really want to do more. I was so focused on wanting to do research while I was there. That's kind of the direction I thought my career was going to go, was strictly lab work, strictly research. I totally fell in love with academia. I'm a first generation college student as well, so it was totally foreign to me and my family. And we're just kind of figuring it out as I went. And I was searching the job postings at Oregon State for like students to apply to. And I came across like an undergraduate research assistant in Dr. Elizabeth Tomasino's lab. Didn't know who Dr. Tomasino was, didn't know anything about the lab. I was like, I'm gonna apply for it. So I just kind of filled out an application. I interviewed with her and I was so nervous. And she's such a, intimidating, obviously intelligent woman. and got the job. And that was the spring term of my freshman year. And I stayed there through graduation, through the summer of 2020, unfortunately, which we all know was COVID time. But yeah, I worked there full time during the summers. She was so great with student schedules, and yeah, I love my time there. So that started off really like sensory lab focused, and then moving more into like the chemistry aspect of like learning how to make reagents and, just all these like good lab practices. And then fall would roll around and it's like, okay, let's get out into the research vineyard. It's harvest time. I'm like, what is this? And so we got to go kind of from the very beginning to the very end of the harvest process on this teeny tiny itty bitty scale. This is way before the new pilot plant at Oregon State, which I'm sure you guys have seen. And we were just fermenting research projects in 5-gallon buckets, which you can imagine is incredibly difficult to standardize. And that was so fascinating. We had a little tiny, like 1-ton Wilms press that was brand new. And it was just like, oh my God, everything was just so adorable. And like learning how to sanitize things and like what sulfur citric is and what, how 70% alcohol is useful. And I just found all of it so foreign and just fascinating. So yeah, just spending, a few baby harvests at Oregon State and honestly just being tenacious with it. I mean, I think you kind of have to be in wine. You have to kind of push through the suck a little bit, whether that's, during harvest you had a super long day or you had a difficult conversation or you hurt yourself or whatever. And there was just kind of no doubt in my mind that I was like, this is what I want my career to be. This is what I'm going to focus on. And also, honestly, logistically, I couldn't afford to fart around in college and, kind of like find my hope and my passion. So when I found something that I was like, hey, this is really cool. I think I like it. Just kind of like sticking with it and diving in. And I'm so lucky that it worked out for me. And I do actually like it. Yeah.
Tell me about getting to understand the process, working with Elizabeth, working and taking classes, coming in with like kind of no real understanding of wine and the cycle of wine and all of that. Mm-hmm. What were the kind of aha moments for you, or the biggest sort of learning moments for you?
God, it's so crazy to reflect on this because I haven't thought about this in so long. I think some really big aha moments. This is just me personally. I tend to kind of, when I'm learning something new, I tend to plateau for a long time and just kind of like, I struggle understanding this one concept or this one, like physically how to do something, struggle with it. And then all of a sudden, it's like you wake up one day and decide to be good at it or decide to understand it. And that was so rewarding to me. And I'm remembering early days, again, at this time, like I thought my career was just going to be strictly lab focused. So I really didn't put too much, and I wish I would have in hindsight, of course, but I really didn't put too much emphasis in production scale at that point. Just focusing on lab work and being like, these results make sense, or I can run something in triplicate and it works, or I can troubleshoot this and I found the error. Something about that discovery process. I'm a true crime girly. I love murder mysteries, and I feel like it kind of scratches that itch, that same kind of like, I want to figure something out. I want to, come to some sort of solution. And this really gave me that like tangible puzzle piece that I could mess around and play with. And working with Dr. Tomasino, she was so, again, shout out Elizabeth, you're the best. And James is also super, super awesome. Working with the two of them was just so inspiring and so, they were so intelligent and also so patient and understanding, and just kind of like they're seeing this little 18, 19-year-old, college for the first time, like can't pay my bills, like, can't pass my classes, whatever, and just giving me so much grace and space to just kind of play and experiment. And I'm so thankful for those years because it was so formative. Obviously, it is for everyone. But they just kind of gave me the space to fail and to come back and to work hard and to keep pushing. And I think that, it is that hard work that kind of lended to my success at the end of the day.
You mentioned the baby harvests and the experiments.
Yeah.
Tell me about what kind of experiments you were working on, and what was your level of understanding at that point of what you were doing and why?
Yeah, totally. Oh man, next to nothing. So we were doing. I think at the time it was fruitiness in Pinot Noir, and then after a couple of years, it turned into a fruitiness in Pinot Gris experiment. So it was a lot of sensory work at that time. So a lot of this wasn't even so much trial on the production point. It was more understanding baselines of what is Pinot Noir fruitiness from this area. So it was kind of more about just making a standard wine from the jump. Yeah, just trying to find a base level of what fruitiness is in Pinot Noir. It was I don't know. I think it was really cool to kind of get this this understanding of what sensory is, and that chemistry of it that I think not a lot of people get to understand. Obviously, our E&V grads, at Cal Poly and at Davis, totally know what I'm talking about. But people come from the industry from all over the place, and it was really cool to me to kind of see this, the experience of strawberry is 50 different chemical compounds, and the way that those ratios interact with each other is so sensitive and volatile that it's so hard to nail down one thing. I always think that's funny when yeast companies will be like, oh, of course this will bump your thiol production, so maybe you can expect more of these yellow fruits or whatever, and it's yes, but that's so not a guarantee. It so depends on your raw product. And I think it kind of got the wheels turning, or at least continued this thought process of wine is such an enigma, and it is something that you can't you can't nail down and hold on to. It's such a moment in time when you make, even just one tank, let alone a blend at the end of the day. You're taking a snippet of a moment in time, and that, especially on the trial scale with the 5-gallon buckets, you get a half a degree in temperature fluctuation. Congratulations, you have a totally different wine. You have a few grams extra of yeast, maybe your population is higher. Congratulations, you have a separate wine. But you also can't get yourself caught up in those details. So I think it was just kind of the beginning of not understanding, which I think is really beautiful, and just kind of being oh, I have so much to learn, or nobody knows what they're doing ever, to a degree. I think a lot of people will disagree with me, but I think we're all just kind of kids in a sandbox, playing with the tools that we got.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that kind of your initial focus you thought was going to be lab and research. Tell me about that sort of that starting to shift, yeah. and at what point you thought production might be the path you wanted to take.
Totally. So I was, again, really heavy in the lab with Dr. Tomasino and all the awesome grad students that we had at that time. And then I knew pretty early on, or had gotten a lot of advice, especially from Tomasino, where she's well, if you want to continue to work in wine, you should work a harvest. So I took the fall term off in 2018, moved my classes around, and continued to take summer classes so I could still graduate in 4 years, again, because, needed to. Mm-hmm. And I worked at Willamette Valley Vineyards. And I was so nervous, and I was so excited. I was working with Gabby Prefontaine, who's now at Northwest Wine Co., I believe. Or no, she's at Belpont. It doesn't matter. And she interviewed me and hired me, and I was wow, I get to work for this really cool, intelligent woman. And I was hired as a lab intern. And that obviously totally rocked my world. Completely fell in love with the organized chaos that is harvest, especially at a place like Willamette Valley Vineyards. At the time, we were doing less tonnage than they are now. I think it was maybe like 2,000 tons, something like that, which is a lot. A lot of it Pinot Gris at the time, a lot of it going into the whole cluster program, which was just direct to tank, no big deal kind of stuff. But then the other thing that they would do is ferment in, in JBs, in the big 1.5 ton bins, under a tent that was heated, and they would fill the parking lot with these huge tents, and then we would just shuffle the bins in. And I remember the winemaker told me to saignée some of these bins, but some of them had started fermenting, and I didn't know how to siphon properly. So I was just, I mean, I think everyone remembers their first time learning how to siphon, let alone siphoning on pre-fermenting must. It was just awful. And even then, and I was crying, I was frustrated, and I was just like, this is still pretty cool. It's like, if you could walk away from something like that and be like, yeah, that was dope, I want to do it again tomorrow. Like that type 2 fun, you know? It was very obvious to me that I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I got a tattoo of a wine glass that same harvest because I was like, boom, going to brand myself and just keep doing it forever. Yeah, and still, even then, I was like, okay, I still want to work in the lab. And I think that aided me a lot. So from my harvest experience there, I went back to school, finished my degree. Graduation was coming up. COVID was happening, so everything was at home. I'm super thankful that I front-loaded my important classes, so I just had kind of frivolous ones towards the end, which was great. And right around that time, the old lab technician who ran the lab there was like, hey, like, I'm leaving. I just wanted to let you know, like, maybe you would want to apply for this job. Like, if you're interested, I'll let the winemakers know. We'll get that going. And I was like, yeah, oh my God, of course. Because at this time I was applying to all kinds of stuff I had no business applying to. I mean, I was applying to assistant winemaker jobs and like just anything on wine jobs. I was like updating and just like throwing my resume out there out of pure like ignorance, just being like, yeah, I can do this. I have one harvest and I just graduated, it's fine. And of course, getting rejected left and right. So when this opportunity came up, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Interviewed for it, and I was like, that went terribly. I'm not going to get this job. And then Gabby called and was like, yeah, of course, we'd love to offer this to you. I was like, oh my God, you know, I didn't think this was going to happen. And then I just jumped right into it. I think it was really towards the end of May of 2020. So at this time, I was technically still not graduated. So I took my finals at my desk on my lunch break at my job. And I just remember thinking like, God, this is cool. Like, I'm so fortunate, so incredibly fortunate. Like, one, during COVID, everybody's losing their jobs left, right, and center. Two, to just be offered a position at a winery that I already know and like kind of know the lay of the land a little bit. It was just really, really cool. And to take over from the person who kind of taught me that like production style lab work, where it's like, yes, this is gonna sound bad. Yes, accurate results are important. However, time is also important. And so it's kind of like, where do we find the balancing act of like giving the winemakers accurate results that they can make decisions based off of, but also getting it to them in an effective manner and not kind of fussing over, you know, 0.1 grams per liter. Maybe that's not a big deal. Depends on the parameter, you know. And so that was really, really, really valuable. And then my time there, you know, they make so much wine. So it was bottling year round, and I had never done bottle prep before, and that was a huge struggle for me, just figuring out, you know, when to turn on the nitrogen, when to turn on the CO2. Oh, this tank is empty. I got to switch this doer out that weighs twice as much as I do, and just kind of learning those little things was really cool. And I think it's kind of, yeah, I just slowly fell in love with it in a way that I didn't even realize at the time. And I remember, I think some of the most important moments of my early career were the times when I really thought I messed up, like tragically, where I distinctly remember one night like doing bottle prep on this, I believe it was a Viognier from Southern Oregon for the Griffin Creek brand. And, you know, let's bump that CO2 up to like 1100, something like that. You know, okay, cool, end of day, go home. I wake up in a cold sweat at 1 a.m. and I go, oh my God, I never turned the CO2 off. The stone is in, the tank is open. It's been running for like 12 hours. I go, drive back down to the winery, open it up, and the whole time I'm thinking, I'm like, somebody's gonna think I'm breaking in, yada, yada. It's like 2 a.m. at this point. I go over to the tank, sure enough, I had left the stone in. Check the CO2, the highest it could be at atmospheric pressure, you know. I was like, God, and of course, and then the CO2 cylinder's empty. I'm like, what a waste. And I'm freaking out and I'm sweating and I'm like, I'm gonna get fired, you know, for whatever reason. I thought that was it. And so I stayed there all morning, got the nitrogen in, fixed the wine, and text the assistant winemaker once like 6:37 rolled around, because I knew that's about the time she woke up. I'm like, hey, you know, I knew you were going to go run an errand, but I need you to come to the winery. I need you to taste something first. She's like, oh, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, I'll explain when you get here. And I was explaining it, and I was so upset, and I was like on the verge of tears, and I felt so bad. And she looks at me at the end of this like 10-minute long speech I was giving, and she's like, well, is the wine fine now? She's like, what's the CO2 at now? And I was like, oh, it's you know, in its parameter. I go, but we sparged it for so long. And she's like, oh, it's fine, just bottle it. And I just immediately started laughing. I was like, I can't believe I spent, you know, hours just tying myself in a knot for something that wasn't that big of a deal. And realizing that like you can have these like little mistakes. Now I know they're little mistakes in hindsight, and come out of it the other side, you're going to be just fine. I think really taught me the value of patience and like having a little bit more resilience, not going into doomsday mode immediately. My whole experience there was so wild, and everything was so organized chaos. I mean, dozens of different varietals, you know, 3 or 4 different brands, thousands of tons, hundreds of different vessels. And, you know, I was the lab person, and I had 2 lab interns who were almost always brand new as well. And it was so amazing just to kind of be like, okay, this and this and this and this and this. And then you see a couple harvests go by. I ended up doing 3 harvests there, about a year and a half full time after graduating, and realizing like, oh, I kind of know what I'm talking about in this space. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I regret not, I haven't done any harvest abroad, you know, which I think in my position and people my age is really, really rare. Of course I regret it, because how cool is that experience? However, I also think staying in one place for a long time gave me so much important information that I think people can sometimes miss out on. I'm not saying it's like better or worse or anything like that, but I can see the value in having done 3 harvests at Willamette, that towards the end of it, I got so much satisfaction from being like, okay, this is fine, I don't need to deal with this right now. You know, this is more important, this is like this. You know, this one glycol line actually is backwards for whatever reason, and you just know that, or you have the layout memorized, and I found that really, really satisfying. So then I guess when I kind of knew my time at Willamette, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for something different. There were a lot of like lifers there, which I think is really amazing, but I was just like, I just think I want to, you know, try something else. I want to do something else. I thought for sure I wanted to, I was like, this is the time to start doing harvest abroad. I go, I want to do one more Oregon harvest, because at the time I had nothing keeping me in Oregon. You know, my family doesn't live here. All I did was graduate school during COVID, get a job, and like, okay, I guess I'll stay. And then I just stayed. So I was like, I want one more Oregon harvest before I leave forever. And I was going to work at Soder. Shout out Jess. That was going to be, I was so excited for that experience. And then about a week after I interviewed with her, she goes, hey, like, you know, I just wanted to let you know, a friend of mine is looking for an enologist, and she's like, I really want you to work with us, but I just wouldn't feel right not telling you about this opportunity. Would you be interested? And I was like, well, you know, yeah, I guess I'll do my due diligence and go through with this interview just for the sake of like practicing and whatever. And she's like, okay, cool. Her name is Maddie. She works at Bergström. Like, she's a new winemaker there. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, obviously I've heard of Bergström Wines. Duh. And that would be an amazing opportunity. So interviewed with Maddie via Zoom. Just a great, super friendly, you guys interviewed Maddie, you know how friendly she is. And just so warm and inviting. And again, obviously intelligent. I'm obviously very drawn to working for intelligent, kind young women, which there's a lot of in this industry. And then I came out here for a visit, and she offered me the job, and I was like, I'd be an idiot to say no. So then I started working here, and I just keep joking that my career just kind of keeps happening to me, like against my will a little bit, you know, where I think I want to go do something else, but then I'm really grateful I didn't, you know. Of course, I would have loved to have done an internship at Soder and then, you know, move to the Southern Hemisphere and like just kind of figure it out as I go. I literally can't believe I got this job. I'm super, super grateful. I know dozens of people that would bend over backwards to be kind of in my position. Yeah, and it just kind of kept happening. So then coming from Willamette, even though being at a large production facility, I was pretty pigeonholed into lab work, for better or worse, really allowed me to hone my skills there. I think I told this to Maddie verbatim. I was like, I could do lab work with my eyes closed. Like all that harvest analysis, I love it, no problem. But I know basically nothing in the cellar. You know, I can make ads, I can roll a tank, I can, you know, use a pump, but I'm not like cellar ninja, you know, whipping hoses around. I wasn't forklift certified, I'd never driven a forklift. Again, super unusual for somebody in my position. And I was like, I have all these things I just like straight up don't know how to do. And I'm super, super, super thankful that her and Josh really took a risk on me and maybe saw my potential. I like to think that they liked the idea of kind of having a blank slate as well, just so they could impose, you know, I didn't have very many bad habits. I had some bad habits, but, you know, they could kind of start fresh with me and kind of train me in the Bergström way. So everything I know about cellar work, everything I know about production is from Maddie, full stop. She's a cellar ninja. She's incredible. I will speak her praises to anybody who will listen. I don't know. And I think it just, something I was thinking about a lot with this interview coming up is, you know, I wanted to emphasize the importance of, especially to all the students who are listening, finding that mentor or that person who believes in you and who reflects you back, you know, whether it be, you know, a person of color or a young woman or an older woman or an older man or whatever, finding that person that reflects you and just kind of mirroring them, not in a copycat way, but just in you know, it's so important to have that mentor. And Maddie has completely changed the trajectory of my career. And completely changed my own mind about what I thought I was capable of. I did not think, straight up, I did not think I was capable of, you know, being really good on the forklift, being a forklift ninja, you know, being, you know, whipping the inner tubes on these big VC lids. And I was like, I can't do that. That's too hard, you know, and that was the dialogue I had for myself for so long. And just kind of finding those people that show you these things are totally possible for you. And she really just helped push me outside of that zone, that like cage that I locked myself in mentally. It was totally hard at first. My first year at Bergström, it's no secret to everybody here, was really difficult. For me, I was kind of like, what did I do? Like, this isn't for me. This is, you know, really difficult. I'm learning all these new things. Suddenly I thought I knew kind of what I was doing, and then suddenly I'm like, you know nothing. And then seeing that evolve and develop and, you know, all these little things. I was talking about the plateauing thing earlier, where it's like all these little things kind of come around you. Oh, wait a minute, I can do that. Oh yeah, this is easy now. Or you learn the tips and tricks, you learn the techniques, and you're like, oh, I can do that with my eyes closed. Yeah, you want me to go, you know, whatever, I'll do that real quick. And these little things just start to become more and more comfortable. And again, that's something that I think you can only get. I've been at Bergström for 3 years now, and I'm so glad I stayed. I'm so thankful that I stuck with it and didn't go like, oh, I'm just gonna go work somewhere else, or oh, I'm just gonna go do something that's easier, or oh, I'm gonna go work a harvest abroad. Again, like sometimes that is the right move for a lot of people. In my, you know, in my life, it wasn't the right move for me. And yeah, I'm just super, super grateful. I can't imagine my career going a different way now that I'm here.
Love that. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But let's talk about Willamette Valley Vineyards for a minute. Time there, you mentioned obviously so much going on there, such a big production, so many different things. So tell me about finding comfort in the organized chaos and finding a way to keep yourself organized and above water.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Color-coded notes. Always. I still, to this day, before harvest, I buy a pack of multicolored pens. I love my colored pens. Nobody's allowed to touch my colored pens, and they're mine. And I love that. That just really helps me keep my day organized. Lists upon lists. I'm such a checklist person. I love checklists. The dopamine of like checking something off is awesome. Yeah, and I think that especially having interns really early on in my career and like directly being the manager for them and being responsible for them, a lot of times people who are older than me as well, was really, really fascinating. I learned a lot about myself and about how to manage people, and you know, you can't get mad, but sometimes you do have to put your foot down and kind of where is that line? And I realized that I'm a better manager, I'm a better employee as well when I'm more organized for everyone else. If I'm disorganized and I give somebody incorrect information, well, that's an extra half hour, whatever, to kind of pivot or to, you know, maybe an incorrect ad gets made or whatever it is. But I can help everybody around me in their jobs and everything go more smoothly and more quickly by being organized. So a lot of that was just like closing the lab door, you know, putting on Joni Mitchell and just like making my lists for the day and just kind of trying to figure out as much as possible and having those little powwow sessions throughout harvest, throughout the chaos. Be like, okay, I just need to sit down real quick and figure this out. Because pushing through something when you aren't really sure what the rest of your day is gonna look like is just gonna cause way more work for you at the end. So that was huge for me. I think a lot of it too, I picked up a lot of those habits from Gabby for sure. She was pretty organized. She was a big list girl. And she also kept all of her notes, and I ended up doing the same thing, just filing cabinets of notes and notes and notes. Because you never know, there's that one moment you're like, oh, what was that ad rate that I did at that one thing? And you can go back and find it. So satisfying. Yeah, but I just think it is so important to take the time to organize yourself because things run way, way more smoothly. On top of that, you know, lots of coffee, lots of good music. Thank God, Willamette Valley Vineyards and Bergström, I know lots of wineries are, big music winery. Speakers all throughout the production hall, has to be. There's one coworker I had while I was at Willamette Valley Vineyards. He was, I forget what his title was, but he basically managed the bottling line among many other things. He was our fix-it guy. His name was Keith Bichetti. He unfortunately passed away in a car accident a few years ago. But I walked into the winery one morning, and he's always the first one there sanitizing the line, and I'm always the second one in because I have to prep the tanks for bottling. And it's like 6 a.m., I'm grumpy, I'm tired, you know, it's cold, I come shuffling in. He's playing Beastie Boys on the speakers at like full blast at like 6 in the morning. And I'm just like, oh God. And he looks at me and he goes, it's better than coffee. And I don't know, it immediately made me smile and it immediately turned my morning around. I was just like, God, the people that you work with just make this so much better, so much better. I'm so thankful for all the awesome coworkers I've had, all the awesome interns we've had come through and do harvest with us, you know. They are the ones that make me want to be good at my job. Because if I'm good at my job, their day is way easier. And that's something that I think I've always taken with me since then.
You obviously had some comfort and some familiarity with chemistry and wine from when you work at Oregon State. Tell me about seeing it in real time and learning, as you mentioned, the balance between accuracy and efficiency, and learning what's important when you're doing wine chemistry for wine at that scale.
Oh man, it was so much of being like, oh God, you spilt a lot of that on the ground. Are you sure it's gonna be fine? Yeah, it'll be fine. You know, and a lot of that, like, yeah, it'll probably be okay. That probably be okay was so important for me to learn. And obviously there's a limit to that. there is a point where you need to be like, okay, no, back up. Let's get this dialed. The context definitely depends, you know. A little bit of yeast on the ground, your cell counts are probably going to be fine at the end of the day. Your fermentation's probably going to be okay. You know, 5 gallons of your acid out on the ground, not okay. Let's, you know, make that adjustment. Let's maybe bump it a little bit, whatever you got to do. Yeah, it's just, I mean, and even still, I also think it depends on the winemaker you work for and kind of what their limits are. It depends on your production scale. At Willamette, you know, our margins were a lot larger. And like, we have a lot of things to do. It's also probably going to be okay. And we also have a lot of eyeballs and a lot of palates on all of our tanks. So everybody's tasting, everybody's checking in on these. So nothing's going to go unmissed, you know. At Bergström, it's, if I'm not going to do it, it might not be gotten to. You know, Maddie's so busy. You know, our cellar hand's busy. Our interns are doing their own thing. We don't expect them to be doing that kind of work anyways. You know, so it's kind of like, okay, now I have to step up and say, no, this is not okay, or yes, this is all right. So it really, really depends. My margins for error are much, much smaller here because I know that they can be more accurate. We also have fewer tanks to check on. So I know I can do that amount of work in 10 hours and still have time for plenty of other things. So I don't know, it really depends. I think it's always good. You know, if you're an enologist or working in the lab, it's always good to understand your winemaker's preferences and their limitations and their perspectives on things. Of course, there's room for you to disagree, but I also think if you're not giving them data that they care about, it literally doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter the work that you're doing. The data has to be effectual in that way. And yeah, that was a really important lesson for me to learn. Of like, it's not just about straight up accuracy or about running every single parameter that you can possibly run. Sometimes, you know, I don't need to know the TA right now. It's probably going to be the same in like 3 weeks, you know, and I can check it later or whatever. And yeah, it's just kind of about having that open dialogue with your winemaking team and what's important to them in the moment.
So you talked about interviewing here and feeling like you were pretty confident in yourself, pretty confident in your ability to run labs. Tell me about getting here and about kind of you talked about the first year being a struggle. What were the eye-opening moments for you? What were the speed bumps along the way?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, just it was eye-opening to realize that unless you're in production at a 2,000, 3,000 ton scale, everything else in Oregon, you're going to be doing a lot of cellar work. And it's going to be dirty and you're going to hurt yourself. I'm covered in bruises. I'm also super clumsy. And so it was really just kind of shocking to me that I was like, oh, this is what winemaking is. Obviously, this is no shade on Willamette because they're making wine too. But to me, that was like, before I was you know, just kind of doing it on a spreadsheet in a way, and also just doing lab work, like that just was my role there. And now I'm making wine. And it's everything about it is totally different. I mean, I think I don't think it's any like industry secret that we all have our crying corners. Every single person that you'll talk to in production, I swear to God, we're just like, oh, where do you go to cry? Oh, you know, I've got this one closet that nobody goes and checks. I love 6C right down there. I don't cry there anymore. But my first year was just kind of like that, getting that emotional release out, I think is so beautiful. I don't think there's anything weak about it inherently. It's emotional work. It's personal work. And I think that was something that was really eye-opening to me early on, was just like, God, I care about this so much, or I take my work so personally. Obviously, you know, there's a balance to that, but I also think that that's really beautiful. So yeah, I mean, learning how to use the forklift. I dented the garage door last harvest. That straight up was just an accident, and I just had to own it. I mean, there's all kinds of speed bumps. A lot of it was understanding the communication style with the new winemaking team was huge. Again, you know, Maddie probably wouldn't mind me saying this, but just like, I love her so much. She's a wonderful boss. Early on when we started, we just did not understand each other. Like, it's like we were speaking 2 different languages. So it was cool to kind of watch that relationship develop as well. And yeah, I don't know. I just think so much of it came from this place of needing to humble myself. I was coming off of Willamette Valley Vineyards, pretty much, being the number 2 to the director of winemaking, which was Terry at the time. We shared an office for a brief moment, and just being like, oh yeah, honestly, I came in being like, I'm hot shit, I know what I'm doing. And then realizing, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And so much of that was just my own humbling that needed to be done, which is cleaning the drains. And I'm a huge arachnophobe, so it's like killing spiders and cobwebbing and, checking the pH of the wastewater pond. I hate doing that, but you got to do it. And just all these little things that you kind of like grow to love. And I think that was the biggest thing, where I wasn't sure if this was for me, because I was limiting myself mentally. And it took a lot of really inspirational, really cool, people that work at Bergström to kind of make me realize, like, this is a life that I want, this is the career that I want, and just kind of help actualize that.
Tell me about the second year compared to the first year. What were the biggest things you noticed, sort of self-improvement? What were the biggest things that maybe that bothered you or you struggled with the first year that felt easier the second or third year?
Oh man, a lot of like little physical things. I was just talking about the VC lids. I just cleaned all our blending tanks earlier this week. And it's so satisfying to me that I'm like, oh, this is easy now. I can just kind of slap these lids on because I know how to work these inner tubes. It's such a specific example for like a larger idea of like, this is not as difficult to me now. And I'm speaking to all the young women out there who are like, petite, or maybe think like, oh, I can't do that, it's too hard, or oh, I'm not mechanically inclined. You just have to learn it. It's not rocket science. It's super easy to learn. It's just about finessing kind of whatever equipment you're working with. And again, Maddie's taught me so much. I still have so much to learn. But that second year, it's just comfortability with pumps, also comfortability with, again, like knowing Maddie's limits and expectations and kind of what she's looking for and what's important to her. I always think is super important, and what's important to Josh and what his limits are and what his expectations are, from like a larger viewpoint. And yeah, that second year was just realizing a lot of like, okay, I can multitask. I think that was something that really got dialed my second year was, while this is running, I feel more comfortable walking away from this racketeer. I don't think it's gonna explode. So I know I have 4 minutes so I can go scrub bungs. And just kind of that mentality of okay, I've done this once, I can trust that this is going well. I can walk away and do something else now. Super, super, super valuable. I think if anybody wants to be dialed in a production sense, you gotta have that understanding of like, okay, yeah, this tank is really full, but I've got this many inches, it's filling at this rate. I can step away from this for a little bit and it's gonna be okay. Within limits, obviously. But, I think that's something I was just terrified of my first year, and the second year became a little bit more like, oh, okay, I can trust myself. It's fine, I know what I'm doing a little bit. So it was just kind of that like, first year was needing that humility. Second year was, okay, let's rebuild the faith in myself. And third year has just kind of been about continuing that. And finding that balance between I can trust myself, but I also need to make sure I'm checking my own ego, which I think is no secret. Winemakers tend to have huge egos, just in general. And so I think it's really important to just kind of always remind yourself, like, I am no more important than anybody else. Nobody's gonna come along and clean that bucket. I'm gonna have to pause and do what I'm doing and do that right now. And I'm really thankful that the Bergström way is very much that. It's one team, one dream. Everybody does everything. And that has been so incredibly formative. Yeah.
You brought up the sort of the physicality of the work now that you're more involved in the cellar than before. Yeah. Tell me about getting comfortable with the physicality of the work, and is it something that you have enjoyed? Have you enjoyed having the physical work?
Absolutely. Some of it is just you need to be stronger physically. I also think, though, that is such a small piece of it. I think I kind of mentioned like the finesse aspect of it. It's about directional strength a lot of times, whether you're hooking up glycol lines or throwing inner tubes on or, I don't know, fixing a hoop on a barrel. It's about directional strength, not just brute strength. I can remember, our intern team last year, they were cleaning the blending tanks. I keep going back to the VC lids because everybody knows what a pain in the ass they are. But we had this, tall, strong guy who was an intern who was like, this is impossible. And I said, I promise, one, I will not give you an impossible task. Or like, this is impossible to do by yourself. I'm like, you do not need another person. I know that you can put it on with another person, but I want you to do it by yourself first. And I was like, I would never give you an impossible task. Two, I did all of these by myself like 3 weeks ago. And look at me and look at you. You're gonna be fine, So it's not just about, I don't wanna give the impression that like it's just about brute strength, because it isn't. A lot of that physicality, came with like, oh, my back is killing me. Okay, I got to learn how to do something different. I'm obviously doing something wrong. And then you kind of change your form and you're like, oh, this is way easier now. We have the benefit of doing a lot of vineyard work here at Bergström as well as a winemaking team. We prune with our farming team every winter. That has been really physical as well, where you're like, it's 35 degrees, it's pissing rain sideways, and my back is killing me, and I'm going up a hill, and I'm bending over, getting, pruning these little heads. And how can I do this better? How can I do this different? And I've never been afraid to ask for help or to ask for pointers. And I think something that everybody should do when you're learning how to do something new is be like, hey, I feel like I'm getting this done, but I feel like it's more difficult than it needs to be. Can you watch me do this real quick and tell me if there's something I can do better? I don't think there's anything wrong with just being like, hey, I need a moment for you to just kind of double check this. And that has been really, really helpful as well. Yeah.
You brought up communication style earlier, and kind of learning to work with Maddie, and that now that you are in a position of both working with her so intensely and also now managing interns, and obviously you're hiring an intern or interviewing an intern today. Tell me about finding that style of both of working as a supervisor, working as a manager, and also working with people above you, and finding your, I guess, personality in both cases.
That's a great question. I feel like I'm kind of in that phase right now where trying to find my personality in both areas, where there's definitely a fine line. I tend to want to be too friendly with interns, straight up. And so I want to focus this year on pulling that back a little bit and being like, I owe them a professional experience, and that's kind of part of it. I think there's a lot of thinking ahead of time, right? Staying organized and making sure that you have your thoughts collected kind of before you go speak to an intern as well. So I want to make sure that I have our winemaking team, specifically Maddie's desires and parameters in mind when I'm giving instructions to other people. And I think that's part of the teamwork aspect of it, I like that Maddie and I share ideas and share personalities and kind of ways of doing things. I think that's really, really cool. It's kind of ideal number one, number two scenario. But I also think, there's moments where I'm like, oh, maybe I could have given them room to do something their own way. I don't know. I think it's a balancing act that I'm still figuring out. Again, I'm so young in my career that, and so new to this kind of style of management that I'm still figuring it out. And I don't know if I have the answers to that. But I also think, when you're having a good time, everything can run more smoothly and we approach things positively. I think interns tend to kind of get down on themselves really easily because they want to do a good job and they want to impress you, and just kind of reminding them it's okay. The world isn't ending. We're not doctors. We're not saving lives. It's just wine. Obviously, I want you to do it a certain way, but I'm not going to spank your booty if you're not doing it right. So I think it's been really interesting just kind of keeping in mind, also you're making someone else's wine at the end of the day. I think that's really important to remember. I'm not making my wine. And so in certain areas, my opinion doesn't really matter. Full stop. So I'm keeping in mind the Bergström way. And I think that's something that's really important to come with one voice and not come with multiple different directions on how to do something. I don't know if that made sense at all, but.
It does make sense, absolutely. I mean, and as you mentioned, young in your career and finding your way, it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Tell me about finding your community outside of Bergström. What has the Oregon wine community been like to get to know, and how have you found colleagues, mentors outside of the workplace?
Well, first off, I got to give a shout out to my wonderful, wonderful friends. My really tight-knit friend group, none of them are in wine. And I think that that's also kind of rare. They all work in different fields. A lot of them work in nonprofit work. And that has been so informative and powerful to me, because I get to kind of understand these other working relationships and these other workplaces. And these other dreams and aspirations. And, you know, when we hang out together, we don't just talk about wine, but they remind me, it's my favorite part, they remind me how cool my job is. And I just and they always make me feel so special and so warm and fuzzy on the inside about making wine. And I think it's so important for us to remember, like, our careers are just solely based off of privilege. You know, we're not providing a necessary good to people. It's a really important good. It's a really, you know, it's a cornerstone of community and celebration. But I think we also need to recognize just how awesome our jobs are. And it's such an honor that we get to make wine for a living. How cool is that? Oregon wine community in general, I mean, obviously, like, so many really, really, really cool young people, a lot of really cool young women and non-binary people, just kind of forging their own way in the winemaking world. And I think it's so fun and so important to just kind of get together with those people and blow off some steam and talk about the thing that bothered you that week. And it is nice to have that community to be like, oh, you know, the drain's clogged or whatever, you know, and you can just kind of speak. You can kind of talk shop without having to explain every little thing, which is so important. So I love all my friends, both in and out of the wine industry, and they absolutely are part of my mental well-being while continuing to do this.
So let's talk a bit about the Oregon wine industry then. Tell me about initial impressions of it, of the wines being made here and the people making them as you've gotten to know the industry. What is special about the Oregon wine industry, and what are if there are changes you've seen since you've been part of it?
Totally. It's no understatement to say, like, community is the biggest factor in Oregon wine. It sounds like a marketing thing, or it sounds like a cliche, but it isn't. It's so unique to our area, and it's so beautiful, where I know I can go to a competitor and be like, oh my God, you know, my DO probe just quit working. Like, can I please borrow yours? You know, or we had our, some fruit show up before we got our dumping forklifts. And so we called the winemakers at Adelsheim and we were like, can we please like borrow your forklift? Do we have one? And we just drove it up the road, and they let us use it for the day. Cause they're like, oh yeah, we're not picking today. Like, go ahead and use it. That's so amazing. Even the cellar tours that we do, it's really common for production teams to kind of get their team together. Okay, make a list of wineries you want to go visit. We'll call them up and we'll go do cellar tours there. And whether it's Josh or Maddie or myself, we know somebody who works there who will show us around. That's crazy. You know, that's amazing. It's just such a privilege to work in this really cool, friendly community. The wines that are being made here, I mean, are ever evolving. I feel like we're seeing, I don't think this is a revolutionary thought, we're seeing such a bigger focus on acid-driven wines. Love, very cool. Seeing a lot of earlier picks than we used to. Some people still, you know, focusing on that phenolic maturity and going for ripeness and going for that like 25 bricks. But a lot of people kind of being like, okay, what if we didn't? You know, what if we kind of pushed ourselves into this little bit, like embracing the cool climate, high acid aspect of Oregon wine. And I think that's really beautiful. I mean, yeah, and there's such a variety of wine being made in Oregon all the time. It lends to that, like, you got to know what producers you like and whose style you like, or who's doing something new and different and cool, and oh, I want to try that, or oh, that's not my favorite, you know, and maybe it's somebody else's favorite. And I just think there's, as much as people say like, oh, Oregon just makes Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, or oh, I'm tired of going to tasting rooms because all it is Pinot. But God, isn't the Pinot so different here versus here versus here? You know, it's not like, you know, tasting the same like super, super, super oaky cab over and over and over again. There's so much nuance to Oregon wine that I find really fascinating. And I find when you bring people who think, oh, I don't know wine, oh, I won't notice the difference between these, and you take them somewhere really cool where you're like, no, you're really gonna like these, and they go, oh, I get it. You know, my family doesn't even really like Chardonnay. And, you know, bringing home, you know, the Chardonnay that we make here, obviously, they're like, wow, I get it. And they go, oh, no, thank you, I don't like Chardonnay. I go, no, try it. And they go, oh my God, I didn't know Chardonnay could taste like this. And I just think that's something that Oregon is doing all the time that's so cool, is like pushing people's expectations on what they think Pinot Noir can be, what they think Chardonnay can be, what they think Pinot Gris can be. You know, I definitely am guilty of like, oh, you know, Pinot Gris is not my favorite, but then every once in a while I have a really cool Pinot Gris from somebody that blows my mind, you know. So I think you can't make assumptions about what Oregon wine is at all.
Tell me about what the industry looks like and feels like right now. Obviously, an interesting and challenging time for wine. What does it feel like being part of the industry right now, and what are you kind of looking ahead for the next few years? What are you hoping for, or maybe what are you thinking is going to happen?
Oh God, big question. You know, again, at the end of the day, always gratitude, especially with the wine industry kind of slowing down a lot. I'm never too worried about my job, like just from a logistical standpoint. And I think that that's a really lovely sentiment. I also think, you know, Oregon wine will bounce back. Wine is forever. The alcohol industry is forever. I mean, we saw sales go up during COVID, right? So it's like you never know, these things that you think are going to hurt, you think are going to slow down, all of a sudden just decide to pick up. I do think there's something to be said about brands like Cho Wines, for example, who do such a good job of cultivating a cult following and engaging with their community. And that is just a masterclass on wine sales, I think. I don't do wine sales straight up, so if that's like incorrect, you know, don't crucify me for it. But I see people are so excited about their wines, and I think that's really cool. And I think that kind of really personal level of interaction is the future of Oregon wine. We're such a small industry, and so many producers are so small that you can't just be like, oh, you know, maybe you've heard of us, I don't know. You have to kind of build this community of people who like believe in you and believe in your product. And I like to think that more people are kind of pushing that direction, especially with a lot of, you know, really intelligent young people in the industry. Yeah, I don't know. I think Oregon wine in general, I think the changing climate will be really interesting to see how that develops. I'm not gonna be an oracle and place any predictions on that because there are people who know far better than I do, who probably have a better lens on that.
So let's talk about your future a little bit. Let's start with this year. You mentioned having some goals for this harvest. Tell me about going into the harvest season. What are you looking to do this year? What steps are you looking to take? And what is, sort of short-term goal for you here?
Yeah, I think always, every year, my goal is to, I always say to hone my craft and to hone in on how we make wine here. I want to understand our blocks better. I want to understand our lots better. I want to understand our coopers better. And I think that is a philosophy I've carried forever, right? Where it's like, I know so little that it's so nice to be in one place for a long time and really perfect it. And I think there's something really satisfying about that to me. So goal for harvest this year is just to understand that little notch more, to predict to anticipate that extra notch. You know, of course, I'm 3 years at Bergström as enologist. I've got my eyes set on assistant winemaker eventually. I'm also not in a hurry because I feel very satisfied, and I don't believe in that, like, you always have to be, what's the next thing? You continually have to be growing. I think that's kind of like a very capitalist mindset that I'm trying to remind myself isn't necessary. So I'm super happy where I'm at. So I think my goal is to, every harvest, as well as this harvest, is to make this harvest the easiest, funnest harvest, and to have amazing wine come out of it. And to kind of anticipate what certain lots are going to need, what certain wines are going to need, as well as definitely growing in that management aspect as well. That's definitely an area, again, continual progress can always be made. So I'm really excited. I'm really, really excited for harvest. I'm ready to get it started. If we could start tomorrow, I would. But I think it's just kind of that continual honing process is huge for me this year.
You kind of hinted at longer term goals there. Let's talk about longer term goals. What do you foresee long term for yourself in the industry? What have you not done that you need to do?
Yeah, totally. I mean, just like everybody says, be my own boss and make my own wine, obviously. I think everybody wants that to some degree. I totally, right now I'm at a place where it's like, what's my dream scenario in 5-10 years? It's, whether it's being assistant, associate winemaker, somewhere in there. I'm not sure still about head winemaker. I'm kind of seeing a lot of paperwork going on in that realm. But I would love the space to make my own wine and to be like, hey, I bought 5 tons and I'm just going to kind of use this corner of the winery to kind of do my own little side project on the side and just kind of see what comes out of that, especially after let's say, making second crop rosé as a sophomore in my dorm room versus now, and just kind of comparing the differences in that. And if I could make all the decisions myself, what would that look like? If I'm not operating within the restraints of a brand, what does that look like for me? That's just that kid in the candy store thing. You could do anything you want. And I think being creative in that way would be very, very satisfying. I'm also not in a rush to do that. That will come with time and it'll come when it's right and I'll know when I'm ready, but I have a feeling it will be on the horizon.
Obviously, you've given it some thought. Give me a hint at some of the decisions you'd like to make, some of the things you'd like to try.
Oh man, I mean, just I feel like I'm so uncreative in this, but just like pushing skin contact in things. I love the idea of experimenting with the parameters that we think are really set over temperature, time, oxygen, this is how you make good wine. And just kind of, what if we let it ferment really, I know it's a red wine, what if we let it ferment really, really cool? Or, I love this whole no cap management thing that people are doing, or just getting weird with it. I really want to get weird with it. And, but it also depends on the crop itself. I'm not going to do anything outrageous. I'm not going to, I can't even think of a good example. I'm not going to throw a bunch of enzymes on a skin contact Sauv Blanc for no reason. I just think it would be fun to make bad wine. It just would be, because I think there's something to be learned from that, and I think there's a way that you can hone your craft in making bad wine, and that's not something I'm willing to do here. With Bergström wine, I would be willing to do it here if they let me quarantine a tank and just be like, okay, this is your financial gain or loss. Good luck, So I think that would be really, really exciting. Yeah.
So last question for you, and it's an interesting question for someone young in their career, but what are you proudest of so far? What do you feel like is your biggest accomplishment?
Oh boy. It's hard to say. Yeah, so far, just growth. So far, comparing myself and my mentality and even the things that I was capable of 3 years ago, to now, night and day. Total night and day. And I think that's something that I'm the proudest of right now, is just kind of recognizing oh wow, I'm early in my career, but I'm also in my late 20s now, and it's change is still possible, and I hope I continue to change. I hope every 3 years I look back and I go, oh my God, I knew nothing, or oh, that was silly, or I think there's something really beautiful about that of I'm not gonna stay the same. Interview me again in 5 years and see what I say, and I'll probably be like, oh my God, that interview was so embarrassing, I didn't know what I was talking about, which I definitely don't. But I don't know, I just, the change is super powerful to me and something I'm super, super proud of.
Just like the wines in your tanks, right?
Just like the wines
changing
in my tank.
all the
They
time.
do change all the time. Day to day, they're different. Oh man, I do love that. I guess if I could do a tangible thing, being able to blend more effectively has been a really great tool in my little back pocket that I've kind of helped grow, I guess, over the last few years. Still could stand to be much improved, but it's cool to kind of get better at that, like putting on your long-term goggles, right, and seeing like, okay, yeah, I'm tasting this, 2 months post MLF, but I can kind of anticipate where it's going to end up, or maybe this is going to need an acid trial, and whatever it is. It's just really, really cool to kind of be like, oh, I know where this wine is going. And that also comes with honing your craft and staying in one place for a long time. I think you get to know your vineyards, you get to know your blocks, kind of what they're prone to. And that's just always really fun for me.
All right.
Cool.
All the questions I have for you.
Right on.
Anything I didn't ask that I should have, or anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about today?
I don't think so. I feel like I hit the main points.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
Totally.
Sharing this amazing day in this amazing space.
Yeah.
And we're going to let you off the hook.
All right. Thank you for everything.